Excited to get started today. And today we're going to talk about customer experience and really what that means. I want to share some statistics with you that I found, almost shocking or surprising maybe, of how much customer experience really plays into people's buying experience and kind of their whole buying journey. And so let's first of all kind of dig into what I'm talking about when I'm talking about that customer experience and really what it is. So in a nutshell, when we talk about customer experience, I liked this quote better than others. It is about showing up for the customer when and where they need you with ease and consistency. And I really think that sums it up in a nutshell. What we're going to talk about today, customer experience is a lot different than, it's not one thing. It's not just how you answer the phone or what you say when someone walks in your shop or how you respond to emails or how quickly you get them a quote. Customer experience really is a broad term that is all of that. It's more about how a customer feels. And so sometimes even the customer experience that you have in your head is different than how someone feels because it's all interpretive, it's all subjective. And so you might feel like you were being very welcoming when they walked in the door, but to them, they might have gotten a cold feeling from you, which altered and affected their customer experience. So we're going to kind of come back to that. But just remember today, as we talk about customer experience, it's more how the customer feels. It's more of a feeling than an action. Now we're going to do actions to hopefully make that feeling better, but it's more of a feeling and it's subjective. So you can do the exact same thing to two customers and their experience is going to be completely different. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So first, when we ask customers, why are you willing to go back to a company that you've already shopped at? This was the response. And the number one was consistently good customer experience. So I think that speaks for itself right there, that someone is willing to go back to a company they've already shopped at if they've had consistency, good customer experience. If you kind of look down the list, convenience, easy payment processing, new and innovative products, customer service on the phone or in person, maybe a follow-up to a sale. But that consistently good customer service is what's most important. And I think that word consistent is important because it can't just be, when we walked in the door, they were polite, but then as they were checking out, the sales clerk was rude to me. It has to be consistent from the first touch all the way to if there's a problem with the product, how is it that you're going to handle that situation? Let's go through a few more statistics here. 55% of consumers would pay more for a better customer experience. And consumers are 2 times more likely to share bad customer service than talk about a positive one. I know a few weeks ago we talked about Google reviews and how Google reviews work. And one tough thing about reviews is people are twice as likely to share a negative review or a negative experience than a positive one. And that's because oftentimes as we have a negative experience, we have a built-up frustration that we want to share. And we feel like if we share this, it's going to get it off our chest, it's going to get it out there. Maybe we're coming from a place of good. And if we share our bad experience, that's going to prevent a friend or family member from having that experience. So maybe it comes from a place of protection, but it's also a place to vent and to complain and to just get it off our chest. Now, sadly, that often happens online. And then if it happens on a place like a Google review, it's very hard to, again, we are not allowed to edit our own Google reviews. We have to ask the person to edit it. So that's why it's most important to, one, ask for reviews from clients that we know are happy, because if you're asked, you're more likely to do it. But then also really focus on that customer experience from the very first second we interact with that customer till the very end, knowing that we have a less likely chance of having any frustration that they might put out online or tell a friend that would then hurt our reputation. So let's go back to that just a little bit. A couple more statistics that I think are really fascinating. 89% of customers have stopped doing business after experiencing poor customer service. That's almost 9 out of 10 people. Even if they love the product, the customer service will make them stop doing business with that company. Again, this very similar statistic, 86% of buyers will pay more. A customer is 4 times more likely to buy from a competitor. The problem of service is related versus price. So if there's 2 competitors having the same product, they're more likely to make their decision based on the customer service than the price, which I think is very interesting. And 55% would pay more for better customer experience. So when you're trying to, set yourself apart from competition, you can really take a look at not only what products do they offer, are we comparing apples to apples? Maybe my quality is a little bit better. Maybe the quality is the exact same. But if you can offer a better customer service experience from the whole journey, we're going to talk today about the journey of a customer, then they are willing to pay more for your product. And so maybe you can charge a little bit more because of that customer service. Now, customer service, for the most part, or customer experience, generally doesn't cost you much. It might cost you a little bit in ways you do things, but it's not a hard cost. And so if we can charge a little bit more by having a better customer experience, we're going to make more money as a company in the long run because it's not costing us tangible goods to have a good customer experience. It might be a little more time. It might be a little, a few more cleaning products or a few more note cards that we mail out. There might be minimal cost, but we can make that up and some by being able to charge a little bit more for our product. Before we move on to kind of the next steps, does anyone have any questions or do any of those statistics hit home? And as we talk today, let's think about a company that you work with as a consumer. And maybe let's put 2 in our heads, but let's put 1 in our head that we love the way we feel when we go to that company. Then let's put another one in our head that every time we go, it's just a frustration, right? It could be a drive-through that you go to. It could be maybe a 1-800 number that you have to call for tech support, and you just dread that call because you know what it's going to be like. Do you guys have a few of those in your head? All right, so let's also, as we feel those pain points, jot those down, because the pain points that you might feel might be something very small. When I was doing a lot of research for this class over the past couple of weeks, and one of the things that got brought up over and over as a frustration was hold time. And people did not like being on hold for an amount of time, and they did not like telling their story more than once. And that seems like a pretty small thing, but it was interesting when I was looking at the statistics of what people considered too long to hold. And sometimes it was like 1 minute or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, but you wouldn't think being on hold from 3 minutes to 4 minutes would make that big of a difference, but it really does, because 1 minute people kind of understood, 3 minutes people were getting aggravated, but then by 4 minutes they were frustrated. And if you sit in silence for 4 minutes, it's a long time. And so again, from internally, if you look at your reporting, which we're going to talk about a little bit, how to measure customer experience, you might say, oh, we went from 3 minutes to 4 minutes. That's not that big of a deal. We're super busy right now. 3 to 4 minutes, we only added 55 seconds. But to a consumer, that extra 55 seconds is a big deal. And so as we look at these and as we look at these things that we measure, let's make a point to think about, and maybe next time you're on hold, set your timer on your phone and just see. And see at what point do you feel that pain of, oh, this is taking forever. And I bet it's around that 3 minutes and 15 second mark, because we can only wait so long. And so I'll be curious, next time you're on hold, do that. Or even just sitting in your office today, set that timer and see when you start to feel uncomfortable, and then see how that inconvenience not just grows by a little bit, but snowballs as you hit 4 minutes or 5 minutes or things like that. That's when you really notice it. I like this in the chat box. My negatives are usually reasons, but I do make efforts to thank for positive experiences. That's exactly right. Let's be proactive, and as we get great customer service, let's tell them, and tell the manager. I like to always, if I have a great waiter or waitress on my way out, I like to tell the manager, they were great today, because I think oftentimes the manager only hears of negative. And so if I have a good customer experience, really trying to reward that. So, and that's right, chat, another thing in the chat box, if there's a chat option, they don't hold. And I think companies are realizing how frustrating hold is, and they're losing customers because of that bad experience. So by adding chat options, or I always appreciate when they say, we'll hold your place in line, can we call you back when it's your turn? I hit yes every time, because I would much rather get on with my work and then get a call back when it's my turn. All right. Let's go back and let's kind of continue this conversation. This is great. Okay, so now we're going to talk through 5, when we talk about customer experience, there's kind of 5 different divisions that we want to address today. And again, this is a very complex subject, but let's kind of break it down into these 5, so that as you're working through your own customer experience with your customers, you want to make sure that you touch on all 5 of these areas, at least in some degree. So the first one, a customer's value to a business is driven by their experiences. This means every interaction, good or bad, a customer has with a brand has an impact on the way they view the brand. So I think this is important to remember, that each interaction, every single one, so even if it's just a phone call, or they just swung in, or all they did was send me a text message, every single interaction affects their customer experience. Now, the first interaction lasts forever, and that's something that we've heard as a kid, you only have one chance to make a first impression, things like that, but it is so true. 24% of people remember their vendor for 2 years after a good experience. And a bad experience, 39% will avoid a vendor for 2 years, just based off that first impression. And that could be how you answer the phone. That could be how fast you return a voicemail. That could be that first quote or that first interaction. So while every interaction is important, let's really remember that first impression and be intentional about how we want that first impression to look. Do we want that first impression to be with the owner of the company? Do we want it to be with the manager? Do we trust our sales staff to make that first impression? Do we want it to be, at their location, at our location? How do we want that first impression to be? And is there any little thing we could add to make that first impression just a little bit bigger? A little bit, maybe if you're, let's say that you have a business that's very heartfelt. Let's say that you have a counseling session that's very casual and a heartfelt. So if I walk in the door and you greet me with a hug versus a handshake, that's going to shape my customer experience, right? Yet if I walk into a restaurant and let's say the hostess is sitting at the hostess stand eating a bowl of French fries on her phone, that has altered that first impression of that restaurant just by what that hostess is doing. And so let's really take some time to think about it. Yeah, that first impression of calling, I like what you put in the chat box. Having to repeat your story, that can be that first impression. You talk to someone, that's one of my biggest frustrations too. You tell your whole story, and then they transfer you, and then you start again, and then they transfer you, and then you start again. And you know that they have the capability to transcribe what you say, or and we've made a note of that in our office. Oftentimes, Dana Dennison in our office answers the phone. Someone might tell her a story. So we've made the shift in our office to, she'll put it on hold, she'll fill me in, and then I answer the phone and say, hi, it's great to talk to you. Dana filled me in, and I just have a few questions. So that lets the person know that while there may still be gaps to fill in, I don't have your message word for word, but at least I know what you're calling about. So you don't have to start from the very beginning. As I was preparing this message this week, we were joking in our office about when you go to the doctor's office, even let's just say you have a sinus infection. You walk in and the nurse says, what's going on today? And you tell the whole story to the nurse, and then the doctor walks in and you have to do the whole thing again. So we were kind of even joking in our office, does the nurse want the whole story knowing that you're gonna have to tell it again, or do they just want the cliff notes, or what are they really asking when they say what's going on today? And so maybe it's even getting that clarification, of if you don't want your customers to have to tell their story twice, maybe not cutting them off, but saying, actually, I want to get you in touch with a person who can answer those questions for you. And maybe it's transferring that person just a little bit sooner so that they don't have to tell their story twice. All right, so first impressions are so important. So today for homework, for step 1, I want you to write down, maybe the different interactions that people have with you throughout the sales process and throughout their journey, and what their first impression is and what you can do to make that one step better. Have you ever walked into a boutique and they offer you something to drink, or maybe they offer you a snack? That can alter someone's first impression by a lot, because, oh, wow, yeah, I would love a bottle of water. Something like that can alter that first impression. Number 2, customers' experiences are broader than simply transactioning. We must understand the complete journey. So oftentimes we think of a customer of their final purchase, what they bought, how much money they spent, how long it took them to make that purchase. But that's really just a very, very, very small part of their journey. And there's been a lot of research done on a customer's journey to buy. And you can see on this chart that purchase is in green. So that's really, we think of it sometimes as the end of the journey, but that's really in the middle. So the beginning of the journey often happens before we have any interaction with a customer. It's them hearing about it. We've talked over the weeks about top of mind awareness. Maybe they see your name, or they've heard it, or they've overheard someone talking about it, but they're not really sure what it is. That top of mind awareness. And then it's that consideration. So then when they do need your service, you're the first one that comes to your mind, and they consider it. It might be at that point calling to see your hours or window shopping. It might be calling for a quote or a discovery meeting. And that's all that consideration stage. Then we go into the purchase site. And that's when the transaction, the money's exchanged. But then after that, it goes into retention. That's when they're leaving review. That's when they're checking out their product, when they're talking about their product. Maybe they want to get more information about it. And the last step is the advocacy. So that's when they're giving you either a good or bad review. Maybe they're telling their friends or family about their experience. And so this, again, is referred to as the customer journey. And so we really want to make sure that in every step of the journey, that experience is as positive as possible. Because if there's 1 or 2 or 3 negative things in that journey, you're going to bring your whole experience down. Does anyone have an example or a circumstance where that journey is a lot longer than they realize, or maybe obviously your businesses are more than just when you make that sale. Are there any ways that you make your journey a better experience for your customers? In our organization, we deal a lot with nonprofits and with boards. And we always joke that we love boards, we love working with nonprofits, we love helping with good work. But oftentimes when you're dealing with a board, it's a journey, sometimes a very long journey, because you might talk to someone on the board who presents it, then you might talk to the executive director, and they might want you to present at the board, but then they don't talk about it till the next meeting, and then they ask you to come present at the meeting, but they can't make a decision until they have their annual budget done. And then they start talking about it again, but then they need a quote, and then they have to apply for a grant. And so sometimes when we deal with boards, it might take a year to have a decision made, especially on a purchase like a website or something a little bit larger. And we have to remember that that journey, whether it lasts 2 weeks or a year, is a journey, and we have to make sure that on every touch we're being consistent and we're helping that experience along. We have to be patient with it. And then it's a lot. And then afterwards, we have to continue that journey, because that person on that board, odds are, is active in the community in another way. Maybe they have their own business. Maybe they're on another board. Maybe they volunteer somewhere. And so we get a lot of our leads from one nonprofit to another nonprofit, because that journey is always intertwined. Does anyone else work with nonprofits or boards or serve on a board and can kind of relate to that? Yeah, it's a journey, and we have to be patient with it, and we appreciate the journey, but knowing that one bad experience could kind of make all that work and that effort go away. All right, perfect. So for homework for step 2, I'd really like you to kind of map out the journey of your customers, what they go through. What are you doing for awareness, for consideration? How do you make that purchase, the experience of the purchase, positive? What do you do after the fact? Do you do a follow-up call? Do you make sure that the product's working? Do you check back and just say hi? And then how are you helping them advocate for you? Are you allowing them to send Google reviews? Are you making it easy? Remember when we talked about removing that friction down the sales funnel? So are you making it easy for them to leave a review by sending them a link or asking them personally? So we want to make sure that the customer experience is positive in every single one of these areas, and it's going to look different for every company. So I would encourage you to map out your full journey, or talk to customers. Say, how did you hear about us? Because that may have happened all the way over here in the yellow that you don't know about. But when you ask customers, how did you hear of us? That's going to help you build that experience through that journey. Step 3, we talk about being able to measure. Oftentimes, again, when we talk about the purchase, we talk about what's measurable. So a customer's value is both personal and social. So it's vital that customers aren't just measured by the value of their shopping baskets. They must also be evaluated by their influence, their online reviews, their social media, among many other outlets. So we talk about this because at customer experience, you could have a customer that spends very little, but is your biggest fan. And they go around and they tell people how great it is, and they can answer questions, they can help other people make that purchase. They are your biggest cheerleader, even though the size of their shopping basket might have been pretty small. On the other side of that, you could have someone that made a very big purchase, but for whatever reason, maybe they don't tell anyone else, or they're just more of a private person. And so sometimes we value customers based on their shopping cart, and we really need to look at the customer experience a little bit differently. We need to thank people for referrals, thank people for references, even if they were a very small customer, price-wise, because you never know what their value is going to be when it comes to the social side of their business. Does that make sense? Does anyone have cheerleaders on their team that you would think they're almost an employee or a family member because they just are so excited for you, they love what you're doing? And a lot of that is a personality type. I have a friend that I would think that she is paid to share her knowledge of our town in Grand Island, And she's not. She just went on her Facebook page. If Sonic has corn dogs for 50 cents, she's posting about it. If somebody just mowed her yard and did a great job, she's posting about it. I think, again, she's at her personality is to protect from bad reviews, but also to help people get a good experience. And so while that customer, if you find personality styles like that just love to share, they love to help you, they ask if they can take 5 business cards because they want to see your business succeed, those customers have a lot of value and their experience needs to be great as well, even if their shopping baskets aren't large. Does that make sense? So maybe think through your homework for step 3 would really be to make a list of customers or clients over the years that maybe had smaller shopping baskets, but have a huge value when it comes to the social side of your business or the review side of your business, even if it's just to support you, even if they stop in your store and tell you how great you're doing, even if they don't buy anything, they're adding value to your business, even if it's just to encourage you that day. So I would encourage you for step 3 to make a list of those people and somehow thank them, send them a gift card, send them a letter, give them a call and say, I really appreciate you. And that's going to mean a lot to them. Step 4, customers seek different experiences depending on both their personal preferences and shopping situation. And I want to talk about this a little bit. For example, when a customer buys a sandwich at lunchtime, they want their experience to be quick and easy. On the other hand, when the same customer buys vitamins from a specialty store, they expect expert advice and time devoted to them to understand their needs. And so sometimes it is a personality style, but sometimes it's also the purchase we're making. So there are times when getting in and out as quickly as possible is what's going to add to your customer experience. Would you guys agree with that? Anytime I'm in a line, at the airport, if I can get through the security quickly, that's going to increase my customer experience of that airport. I'm more likely to possibly fly through that airport again because I got through that security line so fast. Now, if a security guard at the airport stopped and talked to every customer or every person flying, and they want to know where they're going and if they've been there before and if they have family there, and that would delay that line by 10 times, and that would hurt my customer experience. Yet, if I go to a boutique and I'm shopping, I'm willing to spend a little bit more on the clothes because they're asking me, what is this outfit for? And where are you going? And oh, that sounds so fun. And don't you think you need shoes for the beach? And have you ever thought about pairing these earrings? And, and they treat you at a different level. So I'm willing to spend more because I like that customer experience of having the expertise and their knowledge, and they're taking the time, they're investing their time to make sure that I'm getting the right product for me. And so when we think about customer experience, there's not a cookie cutter. The more time you spend, the better the experience. Again, in an airport line, that is not the case, right? But then on the other hand, if we're always rushed through to get as fast as possible, that can hurt our customer experience as well. And so I think, again, for step 4, let's really take a look at what part of our customer's journey should be quick and easy and fast. And what part of our customer journey should we spend some more time and talk to them and make sure they understand and walk them through it a little bit more. And time is just one area where that's important. You could also go through with money. There's some things that maybe they want inexpensive, where there's other parts of the journey that they're okay spending more money. You could do that with convenience. We always talk about a combination of automated messages and personal messages, even through Facebook. Through the Facebook message system, you can set up frequently asked questions and automated messages. And that increases my experience. If I'm on someone's Facebook page at 10 o'clock at night and I ask a simple question, like what are your hours? Having that automated message increases my customer experience. But there's other times where I actually want a real person to talk to. I don't want that automated message. I would like a person, I don't want that, the, robot type answer. And so let's think through that. And I think there's always a hybrid of that. But we want to make sure that we're putting the person where the person's needed, the automation where that's helpful. Be quick when that increases experience, and then take the time when that increases the customer's experience. It's not a one size fits all, but let's take some time this week to really evaluate what makes that experience the best. Okay, number 5, we're getting through these guys, is you can't maintain or enhance customer experience without understanding and measuring it. With marketing campaigns, for instance, we ask and receive sales to the customers we've targeted. Is who we've targeted, can we measure that? With website changes, have we decreased the rate of abandoned carts? So sometimes we can measure customer experience and sometimes we can't. So the things that we can't measure are typically emotional. We can't necessarily measure someone's loyalty unless we follow them around and make sure they don't shop anywhere else. We can't really measure if they give compliments. We can't really measure if our company comes up at coffee, what they'll say. Those things we can't measure. But there are things we can measure. And every industry is going to be a little bit different. But you typically can measure how fast something takes, what percentage of leads you're closing. If you're trying to do an upsell, what percentage of purchases bite onto that upsell. Again, what's the completion? What's our shipping time? There are parts of customer experience we can measure, and those things we really should. One industry that I feel like tries to do a good tries to measure customer experience. Personally, I've never worked in fast food, but I have 4 busy kids, so unfortunately we do drive-thrus on occasion, and you know how they have that ticker that shows how fast that drive-through has taken, and that's an area of customer experience they can measure. They can't measure if all the fries are hot that go out the door. That's something they can't measure, and they can't necessarily measure if I'm going to refer customers to McDonald's when I get at the soccer game. That's not something they can measure. But they can measure that it took 2 minutes and 30 seconds for my car to go from the time I placed my order until I drove away. And they can measure that. And that's something that they try to get faster and faster. And then they fast food, if we take that as an example, they have adjusted their system to make that customer experience better. One way that I have seen that fast food has tried to adjust that system is, have you noticed in the past maybe 5 years or so that they have the stalls to wait, so that if your order's not ready and it's going to take a while, they'll have you go park, install one, or pull forward. And that's so that the customer experience of the next car can be better because their order will be a little bit faster. So if you think drive-thrus have been around for a long time, and that concept of parking and they'll bring your order out if it's going to take a little bit longer, that's a pretty new concept. But the reason is they're finding with customer experience, if they can't get it fast enough, or if one car is going to hurt the customer experience for the next 10 cars in line, they would rather make that person pull off so that they can keep the customer experience high for the ones behind them. I typically don't mind pulling off to that stall because typically they say, we just put down fresh French fries. Do you mind pulling off and we'll bring them out to you as soon as they're ready? So to me, that customer experience, I would rather wait for a few minutes to have fresh food. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone involved, as long as it's communicated the right way. Now, if they came to my car and said, hey, we're really slow today, can you please pull up there and we'll bring out your food? Just that communication piece is going to alter my customer experience. So by even communicating it the way that they want it to sound is going to make a difference. Can anyone else think of of things that they can measure either in their business or another business that could affect the customer experience? I know I touched on it last week, but we have been, in our agency, we now measure the time it takes to get a quote out the door. And that has significantly helped our closing rate. We're now getting quotes out the door quickly, and it seems like people are more eager to buy than when they had to wait a week or so for a quote. April, did you have something to share?
Yeah, when you were asking about, experiences, I was just going to say, I think it's important to be greeted, especially if it is a small business, like to be acknowledged, because, you want them to acknowledge that you're there.
Absolutely.
It doesn't feel good walk in and nobody pays you any mind, but then I can't stand the overbearing, like, being indigenous, sometimes you get followed in a store, so those, just a biased opinion or, those type of experiences make you not even want to go to a store because you're automatically being profiled, so those type of experiences, can, change that customer business relationship too.
Absolutely. That's a great point that you brought up. And so it's really finding that balance. It's finding that balance that you're comfortable with, that your customers are comfortable with, of greeting. I agree. When I am going shopping, if I walk into a store, let's say I'm just window shopping on vacation at a little, gift shop. If no one greets me and I walk in and I make a lap and I don't really see anything that I need and I walk out, and if no one greeted me or no one took the time, I really don't have I don't think twice about just going on to the next store. And it's not that I don't buy because of that, but it's just, a quick lap. But if I walk into a boutique or a gift shop or something and someone makes an effort, they come behind the counter, they greet me, they ask what I'm looking for, maybe they make a few suggestions. I feel more, not a guilt, but I'm more likely to buy something because I feel like they have invested their time, they care, I'm trying to support their local business. You're right, but then there's also that fine line of making sure that you're treating customers the same, making sure that your staff understands that sensitive subject of not profiling or not being over pushy or not assuming. So it is definitely a fine line. And I think, again, just really thinking of how would I want to be treated when I go into a store, and then, treating your customers with that same level. So the first step in customer experience is really taking that time to reflect on how do I like to be treated? A silly thing at high, like I like when they ask if I need help with anything, but I'm a person where I'm a very practical person. And so if I say, yeah, I'm looking for almonds, they always like to walk me there, which I know is their customer experience. And like we talked about yesterday,
Right.
the friction in that sales funnel. But I'm practical enough that I want to get it on my way as doing everything else. And so like my customer experience is like, no, just tell me what aisle it is and I'll go from there. But it all comes down to that customer experience and what you like, and there's obviously a lot of research and science goes behind why companies do what they do.
Yeah, that is something that I noticed about Hy-Vee. But, Hy-Vee experience overall is, I don't know, it's a very, I've not had a not pleasant experience, there. And it just, I don't know, they seem to go a little above and beyond because they do offer like nutrition, a dietitian to help you with your nutrition, you know what I mean? So And then, you know, the community that is created in the like the dining area, you
Mhm.
know.
Absolutely.
Um,
That's a huge part of their
y-
customer experience.
yeah, and even their like vaccination, not COVID, but I mean, yeah, they're doing
Mhm.
COVID, but you know, like when they do the flu,
Mhm.
you know, it just seems, and even their products, you
Absolutely.
know, I love the deli, you know, the meat section at Hy-Vee. Like
Mhm.
they don't offer like those meat bundles, you know, that
Right.
they at any other store, you know. So there is, you know, yeah, a bit of a price difference, but I sometimes think that it's made up in that effort because you're right, they do walk you through the
Right.
aisle.
So if we talk about that really quick, that's interesting that you say that because, and I feel the same way when I go to Hy-Vee. It's not my go-to grocery store, but it's also,
Yeah, not many.
but it's also like most people, if we went to Hy-Vee and we, people understand that it's not necessarily the cheapest option, but 55% of customers are willing to pay more for better customer service. So they understand that groceries might be a little bit higher, but to get someone to walk into my car, to get someone to bag them, to get someone to help me shop is worth more money. And so again, when we go back to that point, that's a great example of that. Let's keep going on, and we always have time to chat here at the end. So let's talk a little bit about why should we take the time to improve our customer experience? Now, anytime we're going to make changes to our business, it's going to take some time. First, it's going to take some time internally to really think through this, to do some homework, to really maybe ask questions. And then second, it's going to take time externally to create new marketing material, to communicate this to our customers, to retrain our staff. My husband and I, along with owning this marketing company, we also own an ice cream shop here in Grand Island called Big Red Treats. And even after putting this presentation, I'm going to go back and retrain our staff on some of these issues because they're important. And so I think, so let's take some time as we talk about putting in the work to make sure that our customers have a great experience. Let's talk about why. So why improve customer experience? The top 3 reasons. Number 1, 42% of businesses say that it improves their customer retention. So as we talk about that sales funnel, and today we kind of talked about the customer journey, and last week we talked about that sales funnel. And again, there are many steps in that sales funnel, and it's easy to lose customers through that funnel. And so once we have a customer, having that retention, having the customer who buys once, buy 2 times or 5 times or 10 times, that's going to cut down on our customer acquisition costs, which is going to make our company more money. So by improving that customer experience, we'll have repeat customers, which are going to, in the long run, make our company more successful. Number 2, we're going to increase our satisfaction. So they are going to be happier. They're going to tell their friends, their family. They're more likely to leave a review. We want those customers to be walking advertisements for us, right? We want them to bring that top of mind awareness. So if someone says, hey, do you know where anywhere like in our industry, do you know anyone that can build websites? Yeah, I sure do actually. And they're selling for you. So you can improve that customer satisfaction. The third reason is it increases cross-selling and upselling. Just like when I was talking about my customer experience when I walk in a boutique, let's say that I go in simply to buy a shirt. If they can make my experience wonderful, maybe they offer me a bottle of water when I walk in, they talk to me about what I'm doing that weekend, what I'm going to wear this shirt for, they have a higher chance of selling me a pair of earrings or a pair of shoes to go with that outfit because that customer experience was so good that I'm more loyal to that. So these are 3 reasons why it's worth the time, the effort, the energy to really take some time on that customer experience. I would encourage you to talk to friends and family that are going to be honest with you and, really say, what do you feel like the customer experience is like when you walk in? And what they say might surprise you. Now, when we talk about customer experience and really what makes a good customer experience, there's kind of two sides. So the left side over here is what clients said about walking into a retail location. So 22%, more than 22% said they would go to a competitor when dissatisfied with the cleanliness. So again, it may be worth hiring a cleaning service to keep that customer experience up, or buying more cleaning products. One thing we did at our ice cream shop was that we added an extra half an hour to opening time so that they could really clean a little bit better. So we're paying an additional half an hour in labor, but if that's going to keep our customers happy, then it's well worth that investment. So a clean store is number one. A positive checkout experience. Again, how do they feel in that final, we talked about first impressions, but now let's talk about that checkout experience. That is very important. 23% of consumers said that they would go to a competitor when dissatisfied with the checkout experience. And that could be either the friendliness of it. It could also be how easy it is to check out. So if you have to enter an email address and you have to enter your zip code and then you have to, do different things, sometimes you're just like, have you ever had to do all of that where you've had to enter in your email, you've had to enter in all this stuff? And let's say that maybe you walk out and you say, oh, I was going to buy one more thing. You might decide it's not worth it because that checkout process was so long. Maybe the checkout line was so long that you say, never mind, I'm not going to go back through that line again just to get this one thing. The third thing is that that the staff or the workers are friendly and knowledgeable associates. This is something that whenever we talk about campaigns, we always talk about how important it is for our staff to be knowledgeable. So if we're going to do a campaign, one example would be like if we're going to offer a new free checking account at a bank, and let's say that we're putting together commercials and ads and magazine ads and specials. We always want to run that campaign internally first so that the staff knows what's going on. Because there's nothing worse than someone going up to a checker and a teller and saying, I would like to open that new checking, and then say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. So we always want to make sure that our staff knows more, or at least as much as who we're advertising to. Has that ever happened to you guys, maybe at a restaurant and you see the special on the board when you walk in, and then when you go to order it, you say, I'll take that special. What was that? And the waitress has no idea. And you think, oh, come on, you should be the expert in this. And so just making sure that anyone that you're working with understands what's going on and they feel confident with that. Then the fourth one is an opportunity to give feedback. So the more opportunities you can give feedback, the better reviews you're going to have. Have you ever noticed on the bottom of fast food receipts, often there's a let us know how we did, call this number, how's my driving on the back of a truck. They want to give you that opportunity to give feedback because companies would rather you give the feedback to them than to post it online, right? If I get my food and my French fries are cold, they would much rather me call this 1-800 number than to go on a local Facebook group and say, oh, my French fries were cold, this is awful, right? So same in your business, good and bad. Give opportunities, and that could be a follow-up call. So let's say that if you do a service, after the service is done, you say, how did that go? And let them give you feedback, because maybe that's great feedback. Maybe it's something that they noticed that you were kind of blinded to that you might want to change in your process. And maybe it's negative feedback, but you'd rather be able to make it right versus them venting to a friend or family member. Now, when we talk about, so that's on the left side, that's more of a in-store, it can really apply to anything. But on the right side here is really what makes a good mobile experience. So this is if you have an online store, maybe if you want people to book an appointment online, pay online. It's really about convenience, security, speed, customer service. And the last thing there is social interaction. So while if someone is coming into a store, they really want the friendly, knowledgeable, positive person in front of them. Yet when they're shopping online, they really don't need that social interaction. They're kind of happy to complete that sales process on their own. And that social interaction actually might slow down the speed or the convenience of their purchase. And so that might actually not be as important. And so just as you look at your business models, make sure that whatever you're doing really works for your business. I want to just go to this last slide, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions, and we can have plenty of time to talk about this. But customer experience life, it's really a life cycle. I know we talked about the journey, but it's really an ever-going cycle, and it can be a lot. You know, when we talk about the purchase, how they select, the research, the need, the recommendations, how to maintain it, the use, the receive. Hopefully that leads to another purchase. It can go round and round and round. And customers are often, again, if you look at these quotes, they need it easy, they need it fast, they need it transparent, they need it consistent, they need it, you know, it can seem like a lot. And you're never going to make everyone happy all the time. Again, if you make hot French fries, someone might complain that they're too hot, right? That's always going to happen. If someone wants to sit and enjoy a lunch, they might complain that their food came out too fast. Have you guys ever had that happen where it's like, oh, it's already here. I was just wanting to talk for a minute. So you're never going to please everyone. But I think the more time we can be intentional about our customer experience, the better it's going to be for everyone. So just in case, I want to be respectful of everyone's time if you do need to jump off, but the next week is the last class in this series. It's going to be at 9 o'clock next Wednesday. We're going to talk about a shift for good, and we're going to talk about how to, even if your business is not a nonprofit or it's not based on a mission for good, even if it's a for-profit business, in this day and age, every business should have a shift towards good, and that is important. People are making buying decisions based off what good your company is doing, whether it be for the community, for humanity, for the environment. And so if we don't make this shift for good, in the next 5 to 10 years, our businesses could be out of the running and not being able to keep up with competitors who are making this shift. And so let's talk about that a little bit next week and kind of start thinking about what causes, what mission we may want to get behind, even as a for-profit business. All right, so I know that was a lot of information today. Again, the link to this presentation is in the chat box, so feel free to go through it again, write down some of these statistics at your own time. So we have a few minutes here. Are there any questions, first of all, that I can help answer on this presentation? All right. Are there any comments? Are there any things that were kind of aha moments or kind of let that light bulb go off today that you want to spend a little more time implementing or talking about? All right. Guys are just soaking it all in. That's great. Well, let's challenge ourselves this week to spend some time on that customer experience. And I want to hear about, at the beginning of class next week, maybe anything that you shifted, even if it's a small thing, offering bottled water when someone walks in on a hot day, what we did to make that shift for a better customer experience. All right, we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.